back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. I'm here in the studio. Stephen's still at home because he's not very well, and his connection's got a bit wobbly, so he'll join us in a few moments when he's got it right. He's rebooting his whole system, I'm told. Now, shall we take a look at today's front pages? Well, good times are coming, according to the Sunday Express. They are taking a look at what they call the Prime Minister's message of hope. And then you look at the Sunday Times, which has a warning for the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. They say undecided voters could give Tories still fresh hope. To the Telegraph, which carries a picture of the late former Pope who died yesterday, aged 95. And then the Daily Mirror reports that Lady Susan Hussey, the late Queen's confidant, is back on royal duties after an apology to that charity chief. She's going to the coronation, apparently. And it's a campaign against dry January in the Daily Star, because they're saying, instead of going dry, we should actually be supporting our pubs over the next month. So let's go through the papers now. And joining us this morning, the assistant editor of Spiked, Ella Whelan, and former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Congratulations for coming in and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. What are we starting with? Ella, shall we start with you? And Rishi Sunak saying good times are coming on the front page of the Express.
Yeah, well, I was laughing in the green room listening to you and Stephen talk about New Year's resolutions and how a lot of the ones that we make are, let's say, full of fluff. You know, they drop over a week. And I think that Rishi Sunak's message is full of fluff, actually, in the Sunday Express. It's a lot of promising, a lot of hope, but no substantial details on what that is. So he writes on the inside paper, we'll get on with building a better future for tomorrow. Several times throughout his article, he praises the resilience and the determination of the British people, which is very nice for all of us listening at home. But there is no real detail as to what he's going to do to fix the series of crises that we're facing. He also seems to be sort of willfully blind to some of the problems that his government are facing. He talks about the fact that we have an inherently strong economy. I think even, you don't have to have a PhD in economics to know that that's not true. Talks about the rise in numbers of doctors and nurses. We know that that's actually a problem within the NHS. So there's a lot of bluster, there's a lot of kind of New Year cheer, but not a lot of detail on how the Prime Minister is going to actually change the lives of people who need their lives changed very seriously.
Do you think it's enough to convince wobbly voters?
Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Look, I think it is an attempt at a New Year's message to try and put all of what happened in 2022 within the Conservative Party and all the political shenanigans behind us and move on to something that is an optimistic message, a hopeful message, something that Rishi and the Conservative Party will hope galvanises the country and gets voters who might have deserted them.
Do you think
back on its side?
Does it smack to you of empty rhetoric, though, saying we're going to be peaceful and prosperous? Is that convincing?
Well, I think,
or is it just the job of a leader who's got to say these things?
I think, if you don't have hope, you've got nothing else going for you. So I think you've got to be hopeful, you've got to be optimistic, and I think that, the work that the government has done to try and stabilise the economy, which did take a bit of a turn after Prime Minister number 2 of the year in 2022, after Liz Truss sort of the kamikaze budget it was known as.
Yeah.
Going into 2023, I know the government will want to try and bring inflation down. That's the number one issue that will impact on people's pockets and impact the cost of living.
He's got to hold firm, I suppose, hasn't he? That's how he will see it.
It's really interesting. I'll just read you out the start of this, because he begins by saying, throughout history, our nation has faced challenges that would leave many daunted, but every time something extraordinary happens, the people of this great country have dug deep and got on with building a better future. So what he's essentially saying there is, things go wrong and somehow they just get better, and I don't have to do anything. It's the people of this country that fix them. I think it's a quite telling.
Is that fair, or is he just trying to promote the sort of blitz spirit?
I think it's a telling opening few sentences, because when you read through the rest of it, I mean, hope is very important in politics, because you have to have some kind of future vision. But it's a fool's hope if it has no understanding of what the challenges are that you face, or any kind kind of plans for how to face them.
Well, talking of those challenges, Charlie, you were looking in The Observer about the fact that they've got strikes they've got to fix, or somebody's got to fix.
Exactly, and it's, as you say, it's the front page of The Observer, and the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has come out this morning to attack the government, to say that the Tories' approach is increasingly reckless in allowing these strikes to continue with no effort to resolve them. She goes on to say that we need the trains to run, ambulances that arrive, and hospital beds available in a functioning economy and society. So after what everybody has seen, over the Christmas period with the RMT going on strike, we've seen the ambulances taking the same sort of industrial action along with the nurses. That is set to continue into the new year. And it's the Labour Party's approach and positioning itself to obviously be the, what it would want to be is the government in waiting to say that, look, this can't continue. The government needs to get round the table with the unions because talks so far have failed. The government will respond by saying, well...
it's not our job.
Exactly.
There's got to be somebody.
It is going back to the previous story about saying that collectively, we're all in this together. It's that Cameron-esque sort of, George Osborne, we've gone through some tough economic times. Now is not the time to be calling industrial action, particularly over the Christmas period.
But interestingly, Ella, in the Times, even Keir Starmer can't, apparently they're saying, even Keir Starmer, with his whopping great lead in the polls at the moment, he can't sit pretty.
No, and I think, we would do well to remember that the last, pretty much since 2016 and the Brexit vote, never trust wholeheartedly a poll because the voters are so fickle, and I think that's a wonderful thing that nobody, you can't take anyone for granted is basically what I'm saying. In particular, the red wall voters, what the Times looks at, and the fact that those surveyed in those areas said, well, yes, I might vote for Labour, but then actually there was a suggestion that in the privacy of the polling booth they might go back to Conservative, and I don't think that says anything particularly positive about Rishi Sunak. I think, in fact, what it says is that neither party have gone very far in coming up with new policies or any kind of exciting, not exciting, but reasonably different change, in particular for the economy. And that means that I think most people will sort of do a default thing. And I actually think there'll be quite a low turnout. I think some of the more recent by-elections and things like that said that.
I think people are just generally a little bit peed off with politics, aren't they?
And that's that is an extremely fair position to have. Why would you go and force yourself to tick your name next to someone who you didn't have any faith in? I mean, one of the interesting things that the Times picks up on is that they say that Sunak's 3 areas for trying to scupper the Starmer victory are introducing new anti-strike laws, tackling immigration, and tackling the NHS. Now, we've just been talking about the fact that, Sunak is trying to say we're all in this together. If you're cracking down on strikes and some of the most kind of draconian policy that's ever come out from this government in terms of stopping people from having their voice heard in their workplace and, through industrial action, that doesn't smell to me like we're all in this together. That actually looks like a government that is targeting and making an enemy of working class people.
I mean, just to counter that very quickly, obviously if you're a police officer or if you're in the armed services, you can't strike anyway, so it's just extending potentially to make sure that the most vulnerable in society, if you need an ambulance, if you need to go to hospital, that you will continue to have the very basic provision of care, which is absolutely essential.
It's a very difficult one though, isn't it? Because it's a fundamental right, isn't it, to withdraw your labour?
Yes.
To have the ability to withdraw your labour to make a point. And by extending that, it just feels like a constriction on our fundamental human rights, if you like.
Well, I think...
it's a very delicate balancing act.
Exactly so, and it's you're absolutely right. It is a fundamental right to withdraw labour where where there are pay and working conditions that aren't appropriate or what you would want them to be. But as I say, if you're a police officer in this country, or if you work in the armed forces, the first line of defence to protect people in this country, the idea that that is just extended, I think the public may actually be more favourable to that idea.
Now, I think we've got Stephen back. Have we managed to sort out our techie problems? And we think, there he is. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Gave you a chance for a nice cup of tea, though.
Yeah, it did. Sorry, all the internet's gone a bit wobbly, and this brand new mic that I bought doesn't seem to be working, so I've had to resort to something else. Anyway, Happy New Year, you too. Charlie, can we have a look at the Times and Putin raising a glass as he sort of rains death down on Ukraine?
We can, and good morning, Stephen. But it's the time going into 2023, it's a whole new year where I think everybody would want to, as we just talked about, forget the woes of 2022. This is a stark reminder in the new year in 2023 that the war in Ukraine is still ongoing. And it came, it was even more apparent last night as there were more strikes against Ukraine in Kyiv. This is the third strike in about 2 days where one individual has obviously very, very sadly been killed. There are 8 injured. And it comes at a time that the headline is Putin raises a glass as missiles bring death to Kyiv. So during Putin's New Year message, he was, which was pre-recorded, he was seen raising a glass of champagne, toasting.
That's disgusting somehow, isn't it? It absolutely turns your stomach, doesn't it?
Totally. But it is a stark reminder that the new year still brings many, many challenges, both at home, but particularly abroad as well.
Okay, look, we're going to leave it there, if you don't mind, but we're seeing you again in another hour. Yes, thank you very much indeed for coming in, because we've got this